Hello and welcome to ClockTower Game Studios. Today we're going to be talking about using an online web-based application called TinkerCAD to design and produce 3D models for building details. This is not meant to be a comprehensive tutorial, it's just kind of a look into my process for how I create something relatively simple like door frames, window frames, doors, any kind of building details, stuff that's generally pretty basic. Now, this isn't necessarily the best tool for 3D modeling in general. I wouldn't use this for any complex things like full-on character sculpts or anything, but for a basic shape like a window frame, it's perfect. It's easy to use, it's intuitive, and we'll just dive right in. So as you can see, I've got what's called the work plane there, and it has a grid layout on it, and the grid you can set in the bottom right what kind of measurements are used and what increment of measurement the snap is to. And what I mean by the snap is as you drag the model around, like there I'm dragging the height, you can adjust it to where it'll automatically click to certain increments. There's also the ability, like you can see here, where I can just enter into one of the text boxes and put in the value I want. So here I've just got a basic cube. There's a whole pull down menu of shapes on the right that are pre-generated, and here you can see once you've got a shape on the work plane, you can grab the handles around the edges, the white and black squares, and just drag it to the shape you want. There's also a little cone above the shape that you can lift it up off of the work plane. So basically all this is done with the mouse. There are some keyboard shortcuts, but really I do most of it with the mouse. I don't use it enough to have everything memorized perfectly, and that's okay. You don't have to be a professional at this. It's just a quick way to mock up some quick shapes, get them printed out in a hurry, and get them onto your terrain pieces in a hurry. So here you can see, like I said, I've got a cube. The default that I've started with is 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters. And I'm just gonna start shaping this to what I want. So the first thing I wanna do is I wanna take my box and I wanna put it into the proportions for essentially the cutout that's going to go through the foam core. So I know I want this frame to be 71 millimeters wide. So there you can see I've just typed that in, and then I want it to be 51 millimeters or 51.5 millimeters tall. Just type that in. And then I know my foam core is only 5 millimeters thick. So the next thing I want to do is reduce the 20 millimeters that's the default and type it in as 5. And then that generally is the shape of the hole that's going to go through the window or through the foam core to make the window. So the next thing I want to do is I want to actually get that hole ready to be made. Alright, so to get the hole started, I'm going to use the box shape hole, which is one of the default options in the basic shapes menu over there on the right hand side of the screen. And I just kind of drag it into place, and there you can see where it intersects with the red box that's making up the Windows frame. So there, when you click on the little icon that looks like the circle is fused with the square, that's how you merge two items. And so by dragging them till they intersect there and then clicking on that, it fuses them together, and that box shaped hole gets cut out of whatever the object is that's supposed to be a solid. So now I'm just going to change it to the size that I want, and I am subtracting 2 millimeters off of both sides because I want everything to be generally 2 millimeters thick around the outside. That way it's a little bit meaty, has a nice solid feel to it, and won't break as easily during printing or afterwards. So once I've got that adjusted, I'll use up there in the top right there, you can see the align function. I'm going to make sure that the handles there are centered on the red box in the back by clicking on it. And there you can see it switched over to where the handles are all in relation to the red box instead of in relation to both items together. So there, I just click on the alignment that puts them all together where it's centered in every dimension. And now by subtracting the 2 millimeters off all the way around, what that does is that gives me a millimeter rim all the way around the outside. So this is essentially just a 1 millimeter thick walled box that is the window frame itself. So we're just doing something real simple. We're just doing a window frame with a facing that'll be on the outside of the building. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make that facing. To make the facing, we're just going to need another simple box. which I'm just going to drag into place there. I decided I wanted the front facing to be 1 millimeter thick. It'll just create a nice rim around the outside front of the windowsill. And this is going to be attached directly to the front of the frame we've already made. So in order to get the hole perfect and to make sure it all lines up and is one part, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unbundle the two pieces, unmerge them. So now you can see the hole again, and you can see the box that the frame is going to be made of. And now I'm just going to adjust the size. I decided that I wanted to have a 5 millimeter lip around the front. So I just add 10 millimeters in both directions. That'll mean that I'll have 5 millimeters of cladding basically around the front of the whole window. So once I've got that done, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm moving my work plane now. And this is one trick you can use to get things lined up or adjacent to different things with no space between them. So now you can see I've put that on what'll be the front face of the window where the where that 5 millimeter lip's going to be. So now if I scroll out and zoom out a little, you can see the space off of the work plane. I just punch that into 0. So now this is completely flush with the front face of the window frame itself. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get it all centered up into position. So I'm just going to click the centering tools. I'm going to use the back side of the box where it's already centered with the hole, and I'm only going to center this on 2 axes this time. I'm going to center it from side to side there, and then I'm going to center it vertically. And the reason I don't want to center it on the other axis is I don't want it to be in the middle of the box. I want it to be on the front face where I use the work plane to place it. So once I've got that done, I realized that I had messed up and hadn't left room for the lip on the inside of the facing that would actually be where the clear plastic I'm going to use for the window, the actual the glass of the window at what I'm going to attach it to. So I end up moving things around. I put my work plane on the back side of my cladding, and then I'm going to move the box that's on there to be flush with it. And what that'll do is that'll move it so the hole is only through the frame, and then the hole on the front is completely solid. There you can see there's no hole going through it. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put another hole on the other side of that work plane, sink it in the 1 millimeter, and that's going to create that lip around the front, which will be the back side of that's where the clear plastic for the glass will be glued. And once that's all done and everything's merged together, you can see that I've got the window facing with the cladding and the frame, and then there's the lip around the inside of it so I can attach the glass effect. It's not a very difficult process. It can be a little time consuming, especially if you make more complex shapes. But as long as you're doing relatively, at least in my opinion, as long as you're doing mechanical shapes, not so much organic shapes with a lot of like compound curves and stuff, or complex high poly count type materials, this is a really useful application. And as you can see, I also used it to bang out some double doors, including the inside frame for them, which will be how I attach the glass to that and then make it look good by putting the frame on the inside as well. It's really not that difficult or that time consuming. It's just putting in a little bit of effort to get the exact shape you want. Make sure you take into consideration things like clearance and how you're going to glue it all together and make it work. And other than that, it's just basically you make some boxes and you subtract some stuff out of the boxes and merge it all together, and it's really pretty straightforward. Really, all things considered, it's not very time consuming either. This whole project from start to finish to get the windows printed out took me roughly 6 hours, 7 hours. It took me an hour and a half or so to make the models in TinkerCAD, and then it took me another, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 hours to print out. But the thing about the printing is that was really low fuss. I started it and then let it run and then cleaned it up. And this is part of the cleanup process that you're seeing here. Now, I haven't replaced the LCD that does the masking for my printer. I have a stereolithograph style resin printer. So basically how that works is there's a light array that's UV lights in the bottom of the printer, and then there's an LCD that essentially masks off all of the resin that you don't want to cure, leaving only the the shape that you want printed visible for each layer. It cures that layer and then steps it up and then cures it again. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about that. That's not the point of the video, but that's why you can see there's some imperfections, like at the bottom of the front of the door frame, and I have some dead pixels, so they also create a hole basically through the model as it prints, and I've got a couple spots where that interfered with this print. But it's not that big a deal. It's going to be easy to fix or hide depending on how I decide to go about it, and I'm not worried about it. So here, as you can see, I'm just cleaning up the supports. This is what made it possible to print the shape without it sticking just as a glob on the print bed. Supporting models is probably the most complex part and most involved part of 3D printing in general. The rest of it's pretty simple when you've got the resin printers. So anyway, I'm just using my hobby knife here to clean up the nubs where the supports were involved in the models. And once I've got that cleaned up, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what the finished product looked like. And here, as you can see, I've cut out the foam core slots for the doors and the windows. And they just fit right through there. And here in a second, I'll flip it over and you can see that the frame, the back side of the frame, is pretty much flush with the foam core. So that's going to be the front doors, and then I'm going to just use the window parts there on the sides, and here you can see a mock-up. So like I said at the beginning, TinkerCAD isn't an advanced 3D modeling tool by any means. It's not meant for any kind of like big complex shapes. It's just kind of a beginner's tool and a good way to make simple shapes like these. It's a great tool for exactly this kind of project, and that's why I recommend using it for this sort of thing. For other things, it's probably not the best tool. So next on the agenda is I want to cover the winners from a poll we had this week from some of our viewers and folks on the Discord that do playtesting with us to see what we're going to do for next week's content. And the idea was that Callie and I decided we were going to do a painting competition, but we were going to make it more than that. We were also going to do a competition for basically kind of model sculpting, so to speak, and we designed models in Hero Forge. So here you can see those models. So next time you're going to see Callie and I sit down and paint the models. We're going to paint both of them. Both of us are going to paint out a printed version of both of these two models. And once that's done, we're going to post the results at the end of the video and have you guys vote on which ones turned out best. And we'll go into more detail about how to vote for those when the time comes in that video. At the moment though, if you want to see that next week, and if you want to see further videos about the Transportation Hub build, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on the video. Also, if you'd like to support the Clock Tower and all that we do, you can check us out on Patreon, where we have our monthly campaign. This month, we're doing a short story, a mission scenario for S.E.E.R, and of course, you get access, depending on the tier you've selected, you get access to the S.E.E.R playtest rules. You can also check us out and tip us by buying us coffee on buymeacoffee.com, which the link will be for in all these in the description below. And as always, I'll be posting Amazon affiliate links in the description for all of the tools and the 3D printer stuff that I use in this video. Of course, the best way to support us is to just keep watching our videos, keep liking them, keep spreading the good word, and thank you guys so much for your support, any and all of it. It's greatly appreciated, and I'm glad you guys have liked the videos so much so far. Just earlier this week, we actually crossed the 100 subscribers threshold, which I know doesn't seem like a lot, but for such a small channel that's so new, that's actually pretty good without having any kind of divine intervention or any bigger channels take us under their wing. This has been really rewarding so far, and I really didn't know how many people would even pay attention or watch, so I'm just glad to have any audience at all. I'm very grateful for everybody that watches the video, and thank you guys again. And remember, at the Clock Tower, it's always game time.